The film begins in the 1970s with Iris and her boyfriend Paul. We see Paul driving with her eyes blindfolded because he has prepared a surprise for her. Iris tries again to give her any hint about the surprise, but Paul refuses. When she attempts to take off the blindfold, Paul stops her, telling her they're almost there and promising that she will love the surprise. After a while, they arrive at a very tall building called the Sky View. Paul takes the blindfold off Iris, who is thrilled and tells him she didn't even know the place had opened yet. Paul explains that, with the help of a friend, he managed to book a reservation in the tower for opening night. Iris is overjoyed and hugs him. Later, she feels her dress isn't appropriate for the elegance around them, but Paul assures her she looks as beautiful as the moon. Iris and Paul enter the tower, and her nervousness is apparent. They take a souvenir photo together and then head inside. They are met by the elevator attendant who tells them to get in. But Iris notices the elevator is crowded and tells the attendant they will wait for the next one. The attendant reassures her there is room, but when they step in, Iris notices the door won't close on its own due to the wait. The attendant closes it manually and assures them this is completely normal. The elevator starts moving, and Iris's anxiety increases. The attendant gives them information about the tower, saying it is 494 feet tall, weighs over 9,000 tons, is made of steel, reinforced concrete and glass, and that the project was completed 5 months ahead of schedule. Iris's anxiety peaks because the speed of completion might have compromised safety. Iris and Paul reach the restaurant at the top of the tower. Paul goes to the receptionist to mention his reservation. The receptionist checks the books and apologizes, stating that the maximum capacity for the opening night has been reached. Paul tells him he is a friend of Jake, who works with him, but the receptionist shocks him by revealing that Jake actually quit his job earlier that day. Paul approaches the receptionist and begs for his help because this day is very important to him, but the receptionist insists he cannot do anything and asks him to step aside so he can do his job. At that moment, the receptionist becomes busy with an important guest, so Iris and Paul head over to the bar and act naturally so no one notices them. They look out at the view from the top of the tower, and Paul notices Iris's anxiety. He tells her he didn't know she was afraid of heights. Iris assures him she isn't afraid, just not used to it, and apologizes because she wanted the night to be perfect. He reassures her that just being together makes the night perfect. She takes a flower and pins it to his jacket lapel, but the flower's thorn pricks her. Paul tries to comfort her, joking that at least she's still alive. He goes to get a drink, and when he returns, he finds Iris looking tired, so she excuses herself to go to the restroom. At that exact moment, a piece of a crystal chandelier falls on the glass floor, causing a minor crack. Iris reaches the restroom and meets a singer who is checking on her son. She asks Iris how far along she is in her pregnancy. Iris gets nervous, saying she doesn't know and hasn't even told her boyfriend the news yet. The singer approaches her warmly, telling her it's joyous news and that her boyfriend will be thrilled if he truly loves her. Iris leaves and meets Paul, who is worried about her. She says she is fine, so Paul suggests they step outside the restaurant to get some fresh air. Once outside, it seems Iris wants to confess her pregnancy, but sensing Paul wants to speak, she asks him to go first. Their conversation is interrupted by a woman screaming next to them as her hat flies off due to the wind. A security guard warns a young boy that he cannot throw a coin from up there because it could hurt someone below. The boy apologizes for his behavior, but as soon as the guard leaves, he goes right back to doing it. Paul continues his conversation with Iris and surprises her with a marriage proposal. She confesses she is pregnant, looking terrified at his reaction. However, Paul jumps with joy, assuring her he is the happiest man in the universe because they will build their life together as a family, and he tells her they should go inside to celebrate. At this time, the boy drops a new metal coin. The coin manages to jam the ventilation system of the entire tower. They enter the party, where the guests are going wild, dancing crazily. At that moment, the tower's bolts start coming loose from the intense movement. The coin shifts from its place, and the crack in the floor expands due to the fallen crystal that no one noticed. Suddenly, Iris gets nervous and stops dancing when she feels the tower shaking. Without any warning, the glass floor shatters, and many people from the party fall through. Paul tries to hold on, but unfortunately, he falls and dies. Amidst the crowd's panic, a fire breaks out in the restaurant. The coin flies and hits a gas pipe, causing a massive explosion. The elevator operators open the stairwell door for people to escape, but the stairs collapse under the sheer weight of the crowd. The attendant urges them to take the elevator, but it also plummets from the overcrowding. Iris manages to emerge unscathed from all of this. She realizes from the movement of the debris that another collapse is imminent, so she heads in the opposite direction. A woman grabs onto her, loses her balance, and falls toward the window. The coin appears again, striking the piano, which then crashes down onto the remaining people, killing them. The boy who was dropping the coins manages to escape the tower, but the piano falls on him, killing him as well. We see Iris looking sadly at her ring, her engagement day having turned into a tragedy. Suddenly, she hears the singer's son calling for help. She runs to save him, but trips, falls from the top of the tower, and dies. We then realize that all of this was a nightmare experienced by a girl named Stephanie. She wakes up terrified and screams in the middle of a lecture. At night, the dream repeats itself, and she wakes up terrified again. Her roommate blames her because she can't sleep due to her screaming. Stephanie tells her that the woman in the dream is her grandmother, Iris, whom she has never seen or known anything about. Her roommate advises her to go back home and uncover the truth about her grandmother to stop the nightmares, rather than dying from sheer terror. Stephanie laughs and promises her she will go. The next day, she arrives at the home of her father, Marty, who apologizes that her brother Charlie has taken over her room. She starts looking for boxes belonging to her mother. Her father is surprised since she had always been angry at her mother for abandoning them, but she tells him she wants to find a trail leading to her grandmother. He tells her he threw those boxes away years ago. Charlie comes downstairs and greets her coldly, telling her he will take her to their Uncle Howard's house. Her father warns her against bringing up Iris there. In the car, Stephanie tells Charlie that her grades are suffering and she might lose her scholarship because she can't sleep from the nightmares. Charlie tells her that he, too, has been having weird dreams. They go to their uncle's house, and Stephanie greets everyone. She asks about Howard, and when he appears, she brings up her mother, Iris. He tries to ignore it, but she continues, telling him about the nightmare and the Sky View restaurant. Howard realizes she knows about the place and tells her that her grandmother was a sick, crazy woman, and to him, she is dead. He explains that after her husband died, her condition severely worsened. She kept her children locked in the house and prevented them from going to school, convinced they were going to die. Things got so bad that the government intervened and took them away from her. But it didn't end there. Iris kept watching them while they were in foster care. When she found out they got married and had kids, she started sending them terrifying letters filled with photos of funerals and corpses. Stephanie asks Howard if he still has those letters. He advises her to stay away from Iris entirely to protect herself and her nerves, as the woman is sick and highly dangerous. When Howard leaves, Stephanie goes to Brenda and tries to convince her to help find anything related to Iris, insisting her life is being destroyed by the nightmares. Brenda is afraid of angering Howard, but Stephanie keeps pleading until Brenda reveals the location of a box where Howard keeps everything related to Iris. Indeed, Stephanie finds a box and sees a photo of Iris and Paul, confirming she is the woman from her dreams. She then heads to her abandoned house in the middle of the woods. Iris speaks to her through a security camera and tells her she doesn't receive guests. Stephanie replies, "I am your granddaughter." Iris agrees to let her in, on the condition that she leaves her phone and keys outside. When she reaches the gate, Iris calls out, telling her to enter carefully. Upon entering, Iris notes she looks like her mother and asks her not to move without permission. She offers her a chair and asks about her mother. Stephanie says she knows nothing because her mother abandoned them 10 years ago. Iris says, "You must have seen the letters, and that's why you came." Stephanie replies she hasn't seen anything, but for 2 months she's been dreaming about an explosion in a restaurant where everyone dies, including Iris. Iris clarifies that it's not just a dream, as she also had that exact vision. She explained that while in the restaurant, she saw what would happen in the future. We flash back to see Iris refusing to listen to Paul, deciding to take the coin from the boy before he throws it, entering the restaurant, and warning everyone that the floor is going to collapse. Returning to the present, Iris tells Stephanie that she saved many people that night, but unfortunately, she shouldn't have done that. The restaurant closed and never reopened. Stephanie thinks she prevented a disaster, but Iris laughs, saying that death doesn't like anyone ruining its plans. Therefore, death returned to finish off everyone who was at the party, even Paul. Stephanie is shocked and asks how death returned. Iris explains that she understood death's tricks over the years and managed to escape it, but it eventually defeated Paul by giving him cancer. She reveals she was diagnosed with her own illness 2 months ago. Stephanie confirms her nightmare started at the same time and asks why. Iris says the vision was passed on to her because of the cancer. She shows her a book, telling her she must learn everything in it and stay away from people, just as she has done for 20 years, believing this is the only safe place. Stephanie opens the book and finds it full of notes on how death operates. Iris tells her these are years of research. Stephanie apologizes, saying she can't stay because of her university studies, but promises to visit. Iris tells her there is no time, and that death will wipe out the entire family. Stephanie gets nervous, says she made a mistake coming here, and insists it's just a dream. She tries to take the book, but Iris stops her. Stephanie leaves and heads outside. Iris is afraid to follow her, thinking death is waiting outside, but she gathers her courage, steps out, and hands her the book, telling her it's the only thing that will save the family. She tells her to return so the vision can be fulfilled. Suddenly, a heavy piece of metal falls and kills Iris. Afterward, Stephanie attends a funeral. Eric tries to ask how their grandmother died, but Stephanie ignores him and walks away. She apologizes to Howard, admitting he was right and she shouldn't have gone to Iris. Howard and Marty try to calm her down. Suddenly, Marty is shocked to see Darlene stepping off a bus. Howard chides her but goes to welcome her. When Stephanie learns Darlene is coming to barbecue, she decides to leave. Charlie tries to convince her to stay, but she gets angry and tells him, "You were young and don't remember that she abandoned us, and now she's showing up out of nowhere." Charlie retorts, "You did the exact same thing. You left, abandoned us, and never answered anyone." Stephanie tries to justify her actions by saying times were hard, and she isn't crazy like their mother a little later. The party starts, and everyone is preparing something. Suddenly, Bobby breaks a glass, and the shards fall into the ice. Darlene arrives with peanut butter cookies. Eric asks her, "Are you trying to kill my brother?" She apologizes, saying she forgot he has an allergy. Howard asks them to celebrate, and Bobby hands out drinks. A piece of glass ends up in one of the cups. Suddenly, Julia feels sick, and Brenda rushes to her. Julia says it was a bug in her drink and throws it away. Meanwhile, Stephanie is poring over her grandmother's book, learning about ways of death. Back to Eric. He turns on the grill. The flames flare up and he laughs, telling his mother the grill is ready. Elsewhere, a picture frame falls and breaks. Stephanie realizes that broken glass could kill someone. Howard suggests to Darlene that she move in with them to be closer to her kids, but she hands back a key, saying her kids will be better off if she stays away. It is revealed there is glass in Marty's cup. Before he can drink, the kids ask Howard to jump on the trampoline with them. At that moment, Darlene notices a metal rake underneath them and removes it. Suddenly, a bottle falls onto the start button of a lawnmower, which begins to move. Stephanie arrives. Howard steps off the trampoline to greet her, but falls to the ground. The lawnmower runs over him and kills him. Stephanie becomes certain that death is hunting her family. She searches through Iris's book and decides to show it to her relatives. She explains that the book contains news clippings, obituaries, and articles about everyone who was in a restaurant during Iris's vision. The strange part is that all these people died later in bizarre and terrifying ways. And even stranger, they died in the exact same order Iris saw in her vision. Because Iris prevented a disaster that was supposed to happen, death returned to take everyone who was in the restaurant one by one until it finally reached Iris years later, as she was the last one to die in the vision, along with the little boy she was with. Julia enters and asks what this has to do with them. Stephanie explains that death took the people in the restaurant and their descendants, which means it's their turn, since their grandmother was supposed to die in the restaurant. Even though they weren't born yet, they are on the list. Bobby gets nervous and asks if everyone in the room will die. Stephanie reassures him that her father and Brenda are off the list because they aren't Iris's blood relatives. She explains that death chooses the oldest first. Since Howard died, and he was the oldest in the family, the next in line is his eldest son, Eric. Then Julia, Bobby, Darlene herself, and finally Charlie. Brenda withdraws from the room, upset, feeling that Iris and her crazy talk have caused enough destruction. Darlene approaches Stephanie and advises her not to let her grandmother's beliefs ruin her life, thanking her for the advice but stating she doesn't need a mother anymore. Tea night. Eric is at work at a tattoo parlor. Before leaving, he decides to tattoo his own hand. At that moment, the alcohol used to sanitize equipment spills and catches on a chain connected to his nose piercing. Eric tries to unhook it, but fails. Suddenly, a fire breaks out in the shop due to the alcohol. At the very last moment, Eric manages to unhook the chain, falls to the floor, and gets injured by glass and fire. In the morning, Stephanie enters Charlie's room and asks him to go with her to check on Eric. She had been trying to call him all night with no answer. In the car, Charlie shocks her by saying a friend messaged him that there was a fire at the tattoo shop last night. Stephanie is terrified and loses her focus. Suddenly, Eric steps out in front of the car, and she almost hits him. They get out quickly to check on him. He tells them the shop did burn down, but he was lucky because his heavy leather jacket saved him. Stephanie says she was afraid he had died and asks about his injured arm. He shows her the tattoo and confidently claims that death might not visit their family again. At that moment, a speeding car almost hits him. Eric tells them he might be immune to death. Stephanie follows him, trying to convince him to be careful, as death could be lurking anywhere. Eric mocks her and tells her to stop talking about death. At this time, Julia leaves the house, surprised that Stephanie is still determined to push her bizarre theory. A garbage truck arrives, and Stephanie is terrified of it. Eric approaches the truck to prove to her that it's impossible for it to kill him. Meanwhile, Julia starts doing some exercises. Suddenly, she falls into a garbage bin, which is lifted into the truck. The driver clearly doesn't hear anything. Stephanie runs after the truck, manages to climb up, and tries to pull Julia out. Eric and Charlie run after them and manage to force the truck to stop. But at that exact moment, the garbage compactor activates, and Julia says goodbye. Later, we see Stephanie devastated, saying that what happened was her fault. She couldn't organize her thoughts and didn't realize it was Julia's turn. Brenda shocks them by saying it is indeed her fault, confessing that Eric is not Howard's biological son. Eric gets emotional, demanding to know who his real father is, and leaves upset. Bobby's anxiety is evident. He knows it's his turn, and he begs Stephanie to help him. She apologizes, saying she can't. Charlie intervenes, asserting she can, since she predicted what happened. However, she failed to realize Julia was next because she didn't have all the information. Darlene asks if this is true. Marty tries to intervene, not wanting his daughter involved, but Darlene insists on knowing. She tells Stephanie she understands what will happen based on Iris's book. Darlene confirms that if she truly can predict what will happen, they have a chance to save the rest of the family. Marty steps in and blames Darlene, saying she destroyed his family when she abandoned her children, begging her not to interfere again and cause them more trauma. Darlene assures him the situation is deadly serious this time. Bobby suggests they must find a way to escape death. He asks Stephanie about the person who survived. She opens a book and says someone named JB was a survivor, but Iris noted nothing about him, and she has no idea how to find him. Darlene says she knows him because her mother mentioned him in her letters, and he works at River Hope Hospital. They decide to go meet him. Bobby insists he must go with them, so Stephanie tries to convince him the road is dangerous and asks him to stay home. But Bobby points out that household accidents happen much more often than road accidents, and he insists on going. As they step outside, Eric comes out and tells him Darlene made peanut butter cookies in the RV, warning that his brother could die if he touches them. He decides to go inside and throw them out before his brother gets in. Before they leave, Eric decides to accompany them to protect his brother. They arrive at the hospital and enter the morgue to meet JB, who is expecting them and knows who they are. He asks about Howard and Julia, and when he learns they died, he asks whose turn is next. They point to Bobby. JB confirms that Iris was a special woman and the one who saved his life. We learn that JB is the child Iris saved. Stephanie realizes Iris was protecting him too. JB tells her Iris watched over him for years, helped him discover the truth, and even helped him secure his home. They became friends. Stephanie asks him about Iris writing, that he met someone who stopped the chain of death and managed to escape. Bobby asks JB how he did it. He tells him there are only two ways. You either kill or you die. He explains that if you kill someone, you take the remaining years of their life. Bobby refuses, stating it's impossible to murder anyone. JB continues, saying that to break the cycle of death, someone must die. Stephanie asks him to clarify. He says he met a girl named Kimberly who was on a death list just like them. When it was her turn, she did die, but her doctor resuscitated her, breaking the cycle. Stephanie asks why her grandmother didn't do this. JB explains it's a massive risk. If they challenge death and fail, it creates utter chaos. Stephanie begs him for another way to escape. JB reveals many people came to him over the years for advice, but he is tired and has cancer, just like Iris. He is shocked to realize they won't be able to escape this time, because they will all die, and he will die too. He informs them he is retiring to enjoy the rest of his life, advising them to do the same and appreciate every second, as they don't know when death will strike. Stephanie desperately searches the area for anything that might help them. Meanwhile, Eric pulls Bobby aside and tries to convince him of JB's first solution, believing that if Bobby dies and is resuscitated, the cycle will break. We return to Darlene, who tells Stephanie that her grandmother managed to evade death for years, and they can too. Charlie interrupts, warning them that Eric and Bobby have disappeared. They run to find them. At this time, Eric is reassuring Bobby that they are in a hospital, and if he dies, doctors will save him. Bobby argues this method isn't safe. Eric asks if he's considering the second option, killing someone and taking their lifespan. They find themselves near the nursery and briefly consider killing a baby, but they back out. Eric realizes they have no choice but the first option. They go buy peanut butter cookies, as Eric knows his brother's severe allergy could stop his heart. They enter the MRI room. Eric brings in a wheelchair and tells Bobby to eat the cookie, explaining that there is an emergency room at the end of the hall. When his heart stops from the allergic reaction, he will rush him there in the wheelchair to be resuscitated. Bobby agrees the plan makes sense, but points out that if it fails, he will die. Eric promises it will work, and he won't let him die. Bobby starts eating the cookie, suddenly falls ill, and frantically tries to take his medication from Eric. Suddenly, the MRI machine activates on its own, magnetically pulling all the metal objects in the room towards it, including Eric's heavy piercings. The machine pulls Eric along with the wheelchair, killing him. Bobby struggles to reach his medicine, and a nurse walks in to see what's happening. A piece of metal flies from a machine behind her, striking and killing Bobby as well. Later, we see Charlie breaking down, completely confused as to why Eric died, since he was related to their bloodline. Stephanie reminds him of JB's words. Challenging death causes massive chaos. Darlene tells them they must go to a safe place. Charlie is furious, screaming that there is no safe place. Stephanie suggests going to Iris's cabin, believing it is safe because Iris successfully hid there from death for years and only died when she stepped outside. Darlene is convinced and decides to lock herself in the cabin to stop death from reaching her children. At that moment, the coin Stephanie found in her grandmother's book drops and an old woman picks it up. Stephanie decides to drive her mother to Iris's house. When they arrive, she rams the gate to enter, successfully getting inside the compound, but her seatbelt gets stuck. She tells her mother to quickly run inside the house until she gets free. Suddenly, an explosion occurs, completely destroying the house, and they are all injured. Darlene fights through the intense pain to save Charlie before a burning light pole falls on him, begging him to save his sister. The pole suddenly collapses on Darlene, killing her. Charlie acts quickly, trying to pull Stephanie out of the sinking car before it completely submerges in the lake. Stephanie loses consciousness. We then see Charlie performing CPR on Stephanie. He hugs her, reassuring her that she had died, but he brought her back to life. The cycle is finally broken. When she asks about their mother, he tells her she sacrificed herself to save them. Sometime later, Charlie is dressed elegantly for his girlfriend Jeannie's birthday. Stephanie is outside with him, happy for him. As she adjusts the flower on his jacket lapel, her finger gets pricked by a thorn, and she suddenly gets nervous. We see an old woman buying something and dropping a coin onto the train tracks. Marty introduces Stephanie to Dr. Riddick. Riddick greets Charlie, and Stephanie mentions that Charlie brought her back from the dead. Dr. Riddick corrects her, stating it wasn't death. She only lost consciousness, and her heart never actually stopped. Stephanie is struck with sheer terror upon realizing death is still after them. At that exact moment, a train derails because of the coin on the tracks, crashing into them and killing Charlie and Stephanie, finally ending the cycle. And that's it. If you like the summary, my friend, please give a nice like and subscribe right away, as it encourages me to make more videos. See you in the next video. Peace.